Welcome. I'm Meredith Barber, and I'm the minister here at Horizon Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm glad to find you here today to this place where we can mourn and celebrate Gordon's life together. We gather here today to honor and to celebrate the life of Gordon Rowe, a child of God. We gather today in sadness as we remember Gordon and mourn his passing. On this day, tears may come, but never forget that tears shed when a loved one dies are precious and sacred, a sign that our hearts hold love for someone who has lived and died, and whose love remains with us now and forevermore. Today, though, is not just a day of sadness. It is also a day of celebration, as we honor and give thanks for Gordon's life. When someone we love passes from our midst, it is good and right to be together, to sing and to pray, to share stories, to cry and to laugh as we remember. As we remember Gordon on this day, we give thanks for his loving and generous spirit and the love he gave and received during his life on this earth. Scripture teaches that all things in this life will one day pass away, all things except that which endures, the greatest gift, the gift of love. Gordon gave the gift of abundant love. His love lives on in the hearts and souls of all whose lives he touched with his love. When all else fails, love remains. Love endures. Love is eternal. Love holds us and keeps us, and it is love that one day will carry us home.
Good afternoon. I'm Pam Schumann, and I am proud and honored to have been part of the original Horizon Players that Gordon started almost 30 years ago, that combined both his passions for music and theater. And we're still going strong, and thanks to Gordon. And as a matter of fact, I found, when I was looking through some Horizon Players things, this program, we probably have done well over 50 presentations at Horizon because we used to do a winter service and a summer show. This was a winter service we did in February of 2020. It was called The Road Not Taken, and it was all about Robert Frost. So I am happy to read now The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the greater claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I saved the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be saying this with a sigh. So many years somewhere down the ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
I'm Ruth Trudeau, and I'm a coordinator for ARE, our Adult Religious Explorations class here at Horizon, where Gordon taught a class on the Bible. But before I speak of that class and of his teachings, a few remarks. In recognition, I'll repeat some of what Pam said, but in recognition of Horizon Players' 25th anniversary, we performed excerpts from the musical Godspell. This was for a worship service in February 2019. We repeated the same material Gordon Rowe had scripted and directed for the first Horizon Players production in 1994. Godspell repeats the story of Jesus as written in the Gospel of Matthew. The story of Jesus loudly told in song, dance, and word. And as I look back at that time, it seems a minor tribute to such a great man. I'm speaking here of Gordon Rowe, not Jesus. Gordon was the founder and spiritual strength of Horizon Players. And there are many stories that can be told of his theatrical experiences. And Gordon would tell those stories over and over, speaking of his philosophy of performance, of his education in the theater, often repeating a lesson from one of his directors. There are no small parts, Rowe, only small actors. He loved the theater, he loved performing, and he loved teaching. And it is about teaching that moves me to speak of Gordon today. For many years, he conducted a Bible study class for ARE, our adult Sunday school class. Gordon was patient. Here's what Gordon wrote in the introduction to our 2019 Godspell worship service. Matthew was a Jewish tax collector employed by the Roman Empire and thus not appreciated by his Jewish associates. His call only takes a few verses, and those who are familiar with their Bible will know these lines. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man called Matthew at the tax office. He said to him, "Follow me." And Matthew arose and followed him. And here Gordon continues the intro. Many people have second careers, but moving from tax collector to one of the 12 disciples is certainly noteworthy. Now, here were two themes that Gordon loved to riff on: the call, being called to action, to hear that still, small voice. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do, oh Lord, you gotta do when the Spirit says do. And he loved the idea of a call to a second or a third career. Changing directions, start a new chapter, make a significant turn in life, and Gordon understood this well. After all, he had been a Methodist minister, and he heard the call to become a teacher. And he understood patience. Gordon was kind. He understood that few who came to his Bible study class had much understanding of the Bible. I certainly did not. For me, Gordon was both teacher and minister. He divided up chapters and verses and asked us to read them out loud in class. He started with the old prophets. We worked our way through the Old Testament and through much of the New, and we spent a lot of time on the letters of Paul. And those of you knowing Gordon as you do, know that he loved Paul. In our discussion of various passages, he was clear. Gordon celebrated and taught the humanity of Christ. He rejoiced in Jesus' teaching and simple preaching of the message. He could hear a passage and ask us, now just think about that. Just stop for a minute and think about that. How would you feel if you were a young girl, a virgin, and the Spirit told you you were going to give birth to one who would reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there would be no end? On Sunday, October 24th, Gordon was to lead ARE in our continuing Bible study. He wrote, "We'll continue our study of the letters of Paul and discuss their importance to Christian theology." Gordon was certainly optimistic, and he was kind. He was never rude, never boastful. He could have been, because his class knew very little about the Bible and much less about Christian theology. And in preparation for that class on Friday, October 22nd, he sent me his outline for Ephesians to be distributed to attendees. The title was Outline for Ephesians, followed by this self-reflecting remark, "Feels good to be back having to think." The subtitle was, Paul organized this letter carefully, as if writing a term paper. Gordon rejoiced in the right. He was a good teacher, and so in Bible class and Horizon Players and in any of Gordon's performances, he taught me love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful. It is not arrogant or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in the right. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Gordon's love endures.
I'm John Myers, and I was not part of the Horizon Players, and I will not be as dramatic as Ruth or as long. My first encounter with Gordon was in 1954 at Southwestern University. I was a freshman, and he was a sophomore. He finished his undergraduate degree there, but I only stayed a year. It took me 3 colleges and 2 degree changes to finish. He knew what he wanted, but it took me a while to figure out my path. We were in the men's chorus and the independents together. I didn't remember that, but he did, and when he pulled out his copy of the yearbook, my memory was refreshed. There we were in black and white. Our next encounter was here at Horizon, back when we were in a storefront in the late 80s, early 90s, somewhere around then. We sang in the choir together for a long time, and I needed to sit beside him when he was singing bass so that I could find the right notes. Our next encounter was teaching together at Gainesville State School. I had retired early from IBM and went to UNT for a master's in education. After graduation, Gordon told me that they needed a math teacher. And I had taught middle school math in the late 50s and early 60s. And I said, yeah, I can do that. I went for an interview, and they said, yes, they needed a math teacher, but if they needed a typing teacher, worse. And being from IBM, I knew how to type. The position became a computer class, which was at least in my field of experience. At Gainesville State School, Gordon and I were often partners in the annual physical restraint training. We were the last chosen partners because neither of us were very skillful at the drills. Though we were a Mutt and Jeff team, we always passed after a few retries. Fortunately, we never had to use the training, and I never heard of a teacher who did, but we still got the training. While teaching at Gainesville, we carpooled for a couple of years before a couple other teachers needed picking up along the way. He picked up one, and I picked up the other. Another connection we had was playing bridge. Gordon was a master at the game, as he was a master at most anything he did. And I was only a social player. If we were partners, he was always gentle with my simple understanding of the basics. We missed both he and Patsy when they moved to San Antonio, and I'm sure there are bridge groups there that are missing him also. And that probably sounds like what I said here not too long ago when you all left to go to San Antonio. So those of you that were here got a repeat. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I am Reverend Grady Rowe. I'm Gordon's baby brother. And Gordon, this is for you. Sing to our Creator. Sing praise to Him. Tell of all His wonderful acts. So writes the ancient psalmist, Psalm 105. Sing to the Lord a new song, for He has done marvelous things. We read in the 98th Psalm. 1 Samuel 16 tells us that whenever King Saul became melancholy and depressed, he would summon the young David to come and sing for him and play his harp for him. Verse 23 tells us, then relief would come to Saul. He would feel better. and the evil spirit would leave him. Did you know that there's over 1,150 references to music in the Bible? How wonderful that when the Creator created the heavens and this earth, that kind and loving and generous one also gave to the world music. Music can capture an experience and heal a hurt, inspire courage, exercise heartache, heartbreak. Music is what feelings sound like, says an unknown author. Music expresses that which cannot be said, writes Victor Hugo. Music can entertain, enlighten, and inspire, says, well, me, I'm the one that said that just right now. And I give thanks for music in this world and for musicians like my big brother, Gordon. Gordon was not just a bringer of music, but also a teacher of music and a guide to what music can do for you. Teaching much more than notes and rhythm, but also teaching self-assurance and poise. Enjoying the adventure of finally getting a piece of music right and launching it heavenward like a joyous prayer. Gordon coached choruses, enabled ensembles, organized octets, trained tenors, boosted basses, actuated altos, sweet-talk sopranos, and sharpened soloist songs, spending his life not just teaching music, but also teaching appreciation for music as an art form. So, of course, when he lay dying in that hospital bed, several of us, his family, surrounded him, and we sang. We filled that room with music. We sang to him. Yes, if you knew Gordon, you knew that he loved music. He was a choir director, an organist and soloist, and he directed community theater musicals and cantatas. And whether you might be in a Luby's cafeteria or on a cruise ship or anywhere else, you might see him spontaneously get up and go stand behind the piano, beside a piano, and sing something like a melody from Hoagie Carmichael, a medley from Hoagie Carmichael. He even once surprised and amused people by launching into an opera aria in Louisville Discount Tires. We were there. Yes, my big brother helped us all learn and appreciate the power of music. During that opening song, didn't that just go to your heart, what we heard, that beautiful opening song? Didn't it just touch you, fill you with peace? My big brother helped us all learn and appreciate the power of music and how it can inspire and encourage us. And I remember always standing at that bedside as he was dying in that hospital. We stood at that bedside and we sang together. And we sang to him. Sometimes you just have to sing. Nothing else will bring what you long for. Nothing else will envelop you with the peace and with the hope that you are seeking. Nothing else. This insight is so well captured in one of my favorite hymns, How Can I Keep From Singing? The lyrics are, through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. Oh, how can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing?
I'm gonna need just a minute.
I'm Carrie Peterson. I am from the old guard of Louisville and Flower Mound. Gordon is larger than life. And so when you're asked to speak at the Gordon show, like, you know there's gonna be that, and the oboe, and you're like, oh man. So, you know, you gotta bring your A game. No pressure. Okay, so here we are in beautiful Carrollton, Texas. It's hard to imagine that when we were growing up here, this was nothing. This was more cows than people. And you pretty much knew everybody. You either went to the Baptist, the Presbyterian, or the Methodist church. We all went to the Methodist church. In fact, my family has that exact Olin Mills photograph with us and my brothers placed exactly the same way. You know, so we all kind of grew up together, but my first memory of Gordon burned into my psyche is Gordon looming over me, because he was like 7 feet, right? He was, and he thundered, blacker than the blackest night. That's the way that hell is. Deeper than the deepest well. That's the way that hell is. Farther than the farthest star. Deeper than the deepest well. Lonely as a coyote howl. Ho! That's the way that hell is. Thank you. Thank you very much. I brought a prop. This was the musical Sweet Flower Mound Land. And I was 11, and Gordon was the fire and brimstone preacher who found us little girls dancing behind the church. And this is the first. We were not OG of Sweet Flower Mound Land, but I can't believe that I actually found this. And I actually went out, because our record player was broken, and bought a record player yesterday so I could listen to the song to make sure I got it right, and then I ended up listening to the whole show, which is a lot. But so one of the things I remember about being backstage, and it was outside, and Gordon was always practicing his lines backstage. Never out of character, always warming up, ready for his song, laser focused on that performance, laser focused on saying, well, us girls are like, and you know, he's always laser focused. I was probably about 12 when Gordon became my first voice teacher. And I wanted to sing like Annie. And he wanted me to sing like Jenny Lind. And he believed in my soprano potential. I really just wanted to be in a chorus line. And around that time, Gordon also became the choir director over at the Presbyterian Church. And eventually my family migrated over there as well. And I remember singing often in that sanctuary with Gordon directing. And I remember performing outside in the summer and singing, and I can clearly remember seeing Gordon's face lit by the conductor's light as he was conducting. My big break was when I was 15, and I was Nancy in the Dallas Children's Theater production of Oliver. And we performed at the old Greenville Avenue Theater, and Gordon and Patsy came to see us. And I was so excited for after the show because I knew that Gordon would just be amazed and starry-eyed over my gifted performance. And in the blazing sun outside the theater, he hugged me, and I remember he said in that Gordon voice, "Very nice, very nice, very nice production. You belted. You belted the whole show. You can't do that." And then I think Patsy tapped his arm or gave him a look or something because he turned to her and said, "Well, she can't. She'll ruin her voice." He was very disappointed in me. He had taught me better. And he was right. As I learned later, it's cool to sound like the girl in the album, but when you got 8 shows a week, it's that technique that's going to get you to the promised land. Gordon took me to my very first ever opera. It was The Rise and Fall of the City of Mahogany. And I remember it was in the Morton H. Myers Symphony Center, which I had to look up because how could that be right? Because but I swear it was there because there was a huge controversy about it, that they were spending all this money to build a symphony hall. Wasteful. And I knew that, it was brand new and shiny, and I was in that expanse with this gentleman who had brought me to see the opera. And I remember how privileged I felt, and that the opera was in English, but it also had subtitles, which was so cool. And our seats were great, and you could see the sweat on the actors' faces, and it was magical. Roger and I also went to go see Hair at the Old Majestic Theater, but I just remember we were both disappointed because we thought there were going to be naked people. In later years, Gordon came to see me in a musical version of Two Gentlemen of Verona at Dallas Shakespeare, and I had learned the value of technique then. And that time backstage, I'm pretty sure he was maybe proud of me. Maybe. When I asked Gordon to officiate my second marriage, he looked very concerned. And I thought, he is going to say no. Oh my gosh, he doesn't marry divorced people. And he explained with furrowed brow that although he was still an ordained Methodist minister, he was no longer affiliated with either the Methodist or Presbyterian church. "My son is gay," he said. "They do not accept homosexuality. I cannot be part of an organization that does not support my son. We are Unitarians now." I was like, cool, awesome. We often say in our house, "What would Mr. Rogers do?" And I think that Mr. Rogers and Gordon were pretty much always on the same page. One of the last times I saw Gordon before we up and moved to New Jersey, he was once again, his 7-foot presence looming over us as he joined my husband and I in marriage. And he sang to us once again. Thank you, Judy, for leading in 13th Corinthians for me. I was thinking this verse is so Gordon that I know somebody is going to do it. But he sang it, which I will not. And picking up where Trudy left off, love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial shall pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. I sang like a child. When I became an adult, I gave up childish ways. For now, we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now, faith, hope, and love abide. These three, but the greatest of these is love. Thank you, Gordon.
I am the very model of a modern Texas minister. By preaching in the pulpit, I will fight the forces sinister. San Marcos, Hollis, Kingsville, to the valley town of Weslaco, to Manchac, Burnett, Sinton, Georgetown, Dallas, and San Angelo. I'm consulting with the Bible and the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost to find out who's been righteous and also just who has sinned the most. I quote the scriptures faithfully from Kingdom Come to Jesus Wept. I've married couples, baptized babies, preached my sermons while they slept.
He's married couples, baptized babies, preached his sermons while they slept. He's married couples, baptized babies, preached his sermons while they slept. He's married couples, baptized babies, preached his sermons while we slept.
MacGregor, Santa Ana, Waxahachie, Claiborne, Toller too. My wife's already moved a lot, there is no town she would eschew. See Patsy singing there, of all the altos she's the thinnest. Her father before me was also a modern Texas minister.
See Patsy singing there, of all the altos she's the thinnest. Her father before him was also a modern Texas minister.
We sang some songs, we prayed some prayers, we visited the elderly. We learned the words that Jesus taught. He said unto us, verily, my mission is to help the church and aid in matters spiritual. I try to get my flock to pray and go to church habitual. I spread the word of faith and hope and love and human charity. I fight the fight to rid the world of any cruel disparity. I want to live a life of social justice, hope, and dignity. Note to self. But first I better clear that with the elders and the board trustees.
But first you'd better clear that with the elders and the board trustees. But first you'd better clear that with the elders and the board trustees. But first you'd better clear that with the elders and the board trustees.
From San Marcos, Alice, Kingsville, to the valley town of Weslaco, to Manchac, Burnett, Sinton, Georgetown, Dallas, and San Angelo. By preaching in the pulpit, I will fight the forces sinister. I am the very model of a modern Texas minister.
By preaching in the pulpit, he will fight the forces sinister. He is the very model of a modern Texas minister.
Closer. Hi, I'm Karen Rowe, the oldest of the three children of Gordon and Patsy, and on behalf of my mother and my two brothers, we'd like to thank you for coming today, both in person, and I don't know where your camera is, but oh, there it is, and the online audience as well. We particularly appreciate the staff and the members and the musicians here at Horizon and with the Dallas Symphony and elsewhere for making this such a special day. My dad was the oldest of 4 children, and he got along pretty well with his siblings. I'm going to watch the camera because 2 of them are on camera. He got along pretty well with his siblings, but as the oldest, when they were children, he could tell them what to do, And by the time his younger brother and the sister got old enough to fight and be annoying, he was off doing his own little world and ignoring them. And he would just take a nap in the car when they would, so he was kind of off on his own, or he'd fall asleep. My grandfather was a Methodist minister in what we called then the Southwest Texas Conference, and so they moved to a variety of parsonages all over the South Texas Conference. My father and his 3 siblings all went to Southwestern University, and then his brothers went on to the Methodist Seminary in Dallas. Anybody who spent any amount of time at all with my father has heard him say the best thing that ever happened is when Patsy Price agreed to marry him. My grandfathers had known each other at the Methodist Cemetery in Dallas, and when they were in seminary, but had preached in different parts of Texas. So my parents didn't really know each other until my dad was up here in Dallas and my mom was in Arlington, and they met. In a way that he never seemed to have been able to figure it out, he persuaded her to leave the university tenure track position that she was on at the University of Texas, at what's now the University of Texas at Arlington, and follow him to all those cities just listed in the Gilbert and Sullivan musical. So let me take a minute and thank them. That arrangement of the Gilbert and Sullivan, I am the very model of the modern Major General, was something that I guess my dad wrote the lyrics for his 60th birthday celebration. So some of my aunts and uncles were here, but what kind of person writes their own Gilbert Sullivan musical about their life? And so it's thank you so much. So some of us were enjoying hearing it before, and we wanted to explain it to the rest of you. So my mother agreed to marry him for reasons he always seemed kind of baffled by. But they moved to a series of small towns. I was born 9 months and that comfortable 2 weeks after the wedding. At the Methodist parsonage, or to a Methodist parsonage in San Angelo. It was the same hospital in which my brother and his Uncle Norman were born, and many of our other relatives have lived in that city as well. Russell came along right on schedule 2 years and 2 months later, and it took another 5 years for my dad to convince Patsy to have that 3rd child. He was never, she had only the 1 sister and he had the 3 siblings, and it took about 5 years to negotiate that. But he always talked about how proud he was of all 3 of us. We all have 3 very different skill sets, and obviously he was quite proud of Roger and his skills. We were raised being very close to my family, my 8 aunts and uncles and my 10 cousins. Many of whom are here today. We would get together on holidays and sometimes Christmas vacations, often going on long car trips to where my cousins lived in Lubbock, the Albuquerque cousins, and then, of course, for my uncles who were ministers, to a series of small town Methodist parsonages all over Texas. But what we would do on these long car trips was to sing, and I often remember getting out of the car and having to perform for my grandparents whatever we had practiced in the car along the way. And I never made you guys do that, but I always considered it. So really everything with my dad, he enjoyed performing, as you could see from the legacy he's left here and the students he taught, the mentoring. So in the spirit of making everything a performance, if anybody ever called the landline at 1323 Carnation, at the home where we lived since 1974, at least for the last 20 years, you got a series of different musical answering machine messages. So one that was on there fairly recently was a litany of musical puns. He said, "We'll be Bach in 10 or 12 minutes, wait for the baritone." There was one that talked about his love of baseball that featured a song from the Broadway musical Damn Yankees. The most elaborate one that we could remember recently, he sang all 4 parts of a barbershop quartet song. And so the focus and planning that had to go into that was he would sing the song he had chosen into a cassette tape recorder. Then as he played that tape, while another tape was recording, he'd sing the second voice. Then while that tape with the two, and so forth, until he had all 4 parts of the barbershop quartet. So these messages were often so long that my Aunt Betty Anderson and probably many of you in the room would just hang up and not wait through that long message, just decide to call back later. At some point, it was easier to send my mother an email and get a faster response that way. There was Roger's college friends used to call at parties. You know, they'd have a couple of drinks and call and laugh at it, and so it was just an endless series of entertainment. But of course, now we wish we had saved some more of the recordings, or that we could anticipate what the next one would be, to appreciate his sense of humor and his playful spirit. But we do have the one that's currently on the machine, and we'll play it for you now. And thank you again to the Horizon community for making this service for us today.
With my regards to Broadway, remember Maple Hill Square. Congratulations, you have reached the musical home of Patsy and Gordon Rowe. Patsy is at the exercise class, and Gordon is auditioning for his big break on Broadway. Please leave your name and number. We will return your call as soon as we get home. Please wait for the oboe to blow concert A.
Wow, well, I mean, should we actually leave a message?
Sure, I guess so. Why don't you go first, though?
Hey, Dad, it's Russell.
And Roger. And we've been thinking about you a lot.
And we know you're not going to be Bach from the barbershop in 10 or 12 minutes this time, but we still want to leave you a message. And maybe say thanks for some of the things that you've taught us.
Sure, let's see. We think we should start with saying thank you for teaching us the value of a good nap.
Right. It was impressive how you were such a good role model for not only your Protestant work ethic, but your ability to fall asleep at any moment, anytime, anywhere.
That man can sleep. We should also say thank you for tote bags. Super embarrassing for us as teenagers. Hey, is that your daddy's purse? What's he carrying in there? Makeup for one of his plays? Music?
But we now know you were just ahead of your time with the whole man bag thing.
And I may, in fact, have been known to carry both makeup and music in my sassy little tote bag.
And how about this? I was at the hotel today, and I was eating the free hotel breakfast, of course, and I was a little tempted to wrap up a little something in a napkin and save it for lunch later.
We know that indeed, for Dad, there was such a thing as a free lunch as long as your hotel served a free breakfast.
I mean, we did technically pay for it, and hotels are expensive, and, you know, it'll save for later, but, you know, unlike you, I did draw the line at using the napkin wrap technique for Danishes and jelly donuts.
Right. We try really hard to be practical, but not veer off the road into unnecessarily cheap.
How thrifty is too thrifty? That's a classic Rowe dilemma.
To buy or not to buy? That is the question. Oh, hey, how's this one? This just happened. We need to be in the car pulling out of the driveway at 8, not at 8:02, not at 8:05, not tying your shoes, not brushing your teeth, not using the bathroom, in the car ready to go at 8 o'clock.
I do remember that. That's Gordonism at its finest. We did also get some ice cream and cookies in your honor yesterday, and we got some hot tea.
Right. And those are the kinds of things that we're thinking the most about, the things that you did, Dad, that we still do. I was probably 10 or 11 years old when I realized not everyone's dad sang opera in the backyard. Or loved classical music, or went to concerts all the time, and now I'm really grateful for all of those.
Yeah, and I have the same thing with reading and books. It felt normal to me to have hundreds of books around the house, and to see you reading books and newspapers every day. And I feel lucky now to spend my life in words and reading and writing.
And in fact, we've been trying to think of words to describe you.
How about idiosyncratic?
Or eccentric.
Colorful.
Flavorful.
Unapologetically yourself.
Oh, how about this one? Unapologetically idiosyncratic. There it is.
He's crusty on the outside, but gooey on the inside.
Like a jelly donut.
Yeah. Strawberry Pop-Tart.
A sandwich cream cookie.
A microwave burrito from the 7-Eleven.
We have come to appreciate, Dad, your balance of firm but flexible.
Gruff but gracious.
And before the time on the tape runs out, that's probably it for now.
I'm sure we'll keep thinking of things and leaving more messages for you.
But for now, thanks, Dad.
We love you. Goodbye.
Bye.
I invite you now, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes for a moment and join me in a few breaths of silence before our time for spoken prayer. Spirit of life, loving and eternal God, we lift up our hearts in thanksgiving for the gift of the life of Gordon. We give thanks that Gordon walked among us, and we count ourselves blessed that his life touched ours. We give thanks for Gordon's generous spirit, for his energy, and for his loyalty to his family and his love of people and all of life. We give thanks for his compassionate and loving heart. We celebrate the love Gordon gave here on this earth. Love for so many, but especially for Patsy and Roger and Russell and Karen. We hold in our hearts today Gordon's entire family. We pray, O God, that our memories of Gordon might remain with us and inspire us to walk our own journeys in this life as he did, with care and kindness, with hard work and honesty, and with deep gratitude for the blessings of family and the ever-present joys of life. Gracious Spirit, we know that the light of Gordon's loving and generous spirit shall remain in the hearts of those who knew and loved him, and that love is stronger than death. In the spirit of thanksgiving for the life of this beloved soul, your child, Gordon, we pray. Amen. Today, we have celebrated Gordon's life through gifts that we offered of song and story and, most of all, laughter. I know he would be so proud of all of you. And so hear these words as you depart from this place. Go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all beings, and in the days to come, may we remember these words of the 90th Psalm. Teach us to honor our days, to make each one count, that we might gain a heart of wisdom. May the love of God be with you always and forever. Amen.
We